Let the recording start. Yes, because the recording actually I'm going to upload it to you later on in the Moodle and in the classroom. The recording will be for you for the for your learning purpose. Remember that the quiz actually we have to pass 2 quizzes. It's not only one, and we choose the top mark. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. We will have another chance. So I'm gonna start sharing with you the presentation of this chapter number 2. Just briefly, I'm gonna describe you the main purpose behind of this chapter. We are willing to understand the environment of the data store, which is the DBMS dedicated in our book. We have a book fully for this purpose, which is the SQL Server programming and something like that. The title. We are willing to what we are going to learn through this let's say chapter, this topic, which is the understanding of the database management system environment fully. The query is related to making the management inside the database management system itself. And the context of management briefly means that we are going to generate, make additions, alteration, we make additions, we make deletion, and let's say we are going to do all these sorts of, let's say, manipulation of data inside the engine. Then after we are going to also make retrievals, things like that. As per the first definition of what is a database management system, is a sort of a data store that lets us manipulate data locally or, let's say, remotely. It has to store it in background at the end of the day. Some features we are going to learn, yes, requirements for setting up a new data store. We see what are the requirements, formats and shapes of queries and the commands we're going to build. We're going to identify some sources where we are going to point our queries and our commands. Yes, and types and, let's say, models of queries we're going to see one by one. The majority and the very famous ones. Basically, the very famous query amongst all is the select query, which is the retrieval query, the select. We are going to see that. So, getting started. Whenever we talk about the design and an application that will utilize a background data store, so there have to be an architecture to be defined. The architecture mainly it's a client-server architecture, and this client-server architecture, as per the n-tier design we saw in chapter number 1, and you had a question in this quiz today morning, in the quiz today, the architecture of client-server the client-server architecture means that we are going to centralize our activity to a background, let's say, resource. In our context here is the database or the database management system that will procure the resources to us. We are going to utilize them at the front-end applications or front-end interfaces. The unique or the one resource is the database or the database management system, and the users, they are a variety or numerous, spread and segregated worldwide, or let's say remotely or locally, whatever. So we have one only. We might have, and the definition says that we'll have one centralized unit or node, or let's say data provider or resource provider, which is the server, and we will have a variety or, let's say, numerous number of clients which they are going to be connected to the server to retrieve the data or whatever the task to do. The server actually will accept and will reject the requests of the clients based on the policies and the politics set by the application or the environment. So the validation is a server side in this context, and the client server architecture, the validation would be processed by the server side. It's the one who will decide, yes, you do this query or not, you execute this query or not, and so on. Yes, good. Getting started with actually still with the architecture only. The context of the n-tier client-server architecture, at least we need two-tier, let's say, two parties to build up the client-server architecture. mainly they are the client and the server. The client, we talk about your browser or your, let's say, front end tool you use to visualize the data, and the server is the background data store. Those are the two parties which are the tier, and this is the minimum number of tiers we will actually need in such architecture. Means two tier seen here. It's the minimum number. Sorry, cancel here. Minimum number of parties or members, or let's say here technically we say tier because it's a node. Two is the minimum number of tiers to build up the client server architecture. And what are they, those two? Mainly we talk about the client and the server. The client is the front end application you use to reach your resource, and the resource provider, which is the server, the SQL Server in our context, is the second tier, is the background element. Okay, I'm gonna stop at this level. Because we'll start with some examples and the formatting of queries just right after we start that next class, inshallah. This small introduction about the SQL Server, I'll upload it to you. Just to close up this this class, I wanna deviate a little bit to the quiz. The quiz actually marks are average. They are not that much perfect, but I have numerous 4.3, 3.3. Actually, 5. Wonderful. 3. Yeah, actually, في درجات زينة, there are good marks. But even though, actually, we will have a second chance for another quiz. Don't worry. Just one question. كل حد فيكم يجاوب نفسه. Did you pass through the video recording of what we saw last Sunday? اللي يجاوب yes, he checks his mark. If you did not do that, الكويز القادم إن شاء الله. Thank you very much for now. I'll stop the recording. Unless you have any questions,